Hi, how are you? How have you been lately? My name is Nyquis and this is Fish&Birds. If you are new here, welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. I'm glad to have you here again. Today, what I'll be discussing is a little bit about my story. And so I came back to Sacramento. I was glad to return home. I did miss my family, but it was not a pleasant experience overall because I got to see just how much dysfunction that we had all been living in for so long. I knew about it beforehand, and that's why I wanted to leave before, but then when I came back, I saw it again, and I realized I'm no longer comfortable with dysfunction. However, I did unfortunately backslide into my own personal sins, and I knew that it was because there were still some things that I needed to have worked out of me, and I understood that it was also my environment that had an influence. So I wanted to be sure not to put everything on, my environment and the people that I was around, which was my family, but also to do some, introspection, reflect on myself, and understand that I also had internal issues, things that still needed to be worked out and improved upon on my own. So being at home, being with my family, I was given that opportunity to reflect on myself, on my growth, and the continued growth that I would be able to experience. And during that time, I knew that I would still have an opportunity to leave home again. And I knew that, I decided that once I left home the second time, I would not return home. When I was in Humboldt, I was given resources for homelessness, and I did not want to receive those because I did not want to experience homelessness. I was afraid of that. But when I returned to Sacramento, the Lord helped me during that time to the point where, should I leave home and have to experience homelessness, then that's just something that I would have to endure because there was no returning home for me. And so, I was inspired to go to LA. That is the destination that I was being led to the second time around after leaving home. At first, I didn't want to go to LA. I don't really care for LA. There's nothing really here that I really wanted in particular. I know of people here in LA, but I don't know them personally. They're just, celebrities. I know celebrities who live in LA, and that's what makes LA pretty cool, but celebrities can't do anything for me. So there's really nothing in LA that I was looking for other than the Lord who was leading me here. So I decided in October, I had a conversation with the Lord in my heart and let him know that if he provides for me the way to get to LA, then I would go. As long as I have the funds to go, then I would go. And the Lord provided for me. I received a check from Goodwill. I had worked there when I was in high school, and it was about $148.36, I believe, or 35 cents. And the moment that I received that check, I knew that the Lord was letting me know that it was time for me to go. And so that Saturday night, so that Friday I cashed a check. I bought some stuff that I needed. So, was it a Friday? No, I think it was actually a Thursday when I got the check. And then I cashed it. And then on Friday, I went and got some stuff. I don't remember. The point is, I bought some stuff that I needed for my trip. And then Saturday night, I booked an Amtrak train ticket to LA. And then Sunday morning, October 20th, 2024, that's when I left. This time, I did not tell my family anything about my plans on leaving. I didn't tell them anything at all. I didn't say a word. They were telling me about some things that they wanted to do the upcoming week, and I was, I said that it would be interesting to do those things, but in my heart I knew I was leaving, and I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to go through what I did before. You know, everyone speaking to me, and I felt like they would try to influence me not to go after all, and I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I left home early that morning, Sunday, about 5 in the morning I left, took a lift to the train station, and while I was there, just before it was time for me to leave, my parents came. They found out that I had left. My sisters told them, and I wasn't mad about that. I was just surprised, and I had another experience with my dad that wasn't very good, and it just helped me to know once again that what I was doing was the right thing. Because I was experiencing so much conflict and opposition, and they were trying so hard to keep me from going, I knew that leaving is exactly what I had to do. And so I did. I left, and I was at peace with the way that I went about not telling my parents and deciding to leave after all, after that experience. And now I'm here. I'm in LA, and being in LA has been a roller coaster. It's been a long ride. I have, in fact, been blessed by the Lord to experience homelessness. I'm currently experiencing homelessness at the age of 21, and the Lord has helped me a lot since being here. So when I first came to LA, I had booked an Airbnb for that night. It was $51. It was cheap. I got a room, and I was thankful for that, but I didn't know what I was going to do the nights following. I didn't have any more money. I had $20 in cash when I came here, and I had $17 on my card. When I arrived in LA, I used the $20 for a taxi ride to get to my Airbnb, and then I used the $17 to buy myself a meal for that night because I was hungry. And that left me with $6 on my card after that. So I definitely didn't have enough to stay in the Airbnb again. But thankfully, the guy that I was staying with, the host, is also a Christian, and the Lord showed me grace, and I was blessed to spend the second night there again, without paying. And that was hard for me, but I'm thankful for it because the next night I did not get to do that again. I didn't have anywhere to go, so I went to the Japanese restaurant where I had eaten from, the night that I got here. And then before sunset, I decided to walk back to the Airbnb because I didn't know where to go. And I ended up sitting out on his porch throughout the night, and it was freezing cold. And the Lord blessed me to get through it. He had shown me before in a dream, I believe it was the 16th of October, I had a dream, and he had shown me that I would be stranded in a foreign land, alone, by myself in the dark with no communication. I could not contact any of my family members, and I was outside. I was stuck alone in the dark. And I was trying really hard to escape going through what I had went through in my dream when I realized what that dream meant. But the Lord blessed me to really reflect on that dream during that time and know that I had only seen the moment when I was stranded in the dark by myself alone with no communication with my parents. I didn't see the morning that would come after. And so he blessed me to pray and trust in him, sing songs of worship. I was able to put on a bunch of my sweaters that I brought with me. Thankfully, I brought a ton of sweaters with me, and I sat on the chair on my Airbnb host's porch from 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 in the morning. It was 12 hours of darkness, and the Lord helped me get through it. It was a tough time. I wasn't able to communicate with my family because I did not have phone service. The only way that I could communicate with people was by connecting to the Wi-Fi, and I wasn't able to connect to the Wi-Fi at my Airbnb's house because I was outside. And I guess the location for the Wi-Fi was in a place that wasn't near the porch. So I couldn't connect, couldn't call or talk to my family. And I didn't want to either, because I didn't want to tell them what I was going through, because I knew they would try to do something to encourage me to come back to Sacramento. And I didn't want to go back. I decided I wouldn't. And I also didn't have a phone charger with me when I left. So I couldn't charge my phone. My phone was dying, and I had to preserve the battery so that I could know what time it was throughout the night. So yeah, I went through 12 hours of darkness, very little sleep, freezing cold, but the Lord was with me and He helped me get through it. And then the morning came. Oh yeah, that night was also a struggle because I had to use the bathroom. And I couldn't go to the bathroom. So the morning came. I was so excited because it was morning, and I was trying to find somewhere to use the bathroom, walking around, seeing if I could get to a restaurant. But one of the restaurants was closed, and the other restaurant said that the bathroom was for customers only, and I was not able to buy anything because I locked my Cash App card and I needed Wi-Fi in order to unlock it, and I didn't have that. So I had to figure out what to do, and I just knew that the only other option I had was to return to the Airbnb and ask if I could use the restroom. I didn't ask though. I ended up going into the guy's house. Thankfully the door was open. I left my bags outside in the driveway, and then I went in, tried to hurry up and use the bathroom before he came and saw me. But just as I was leaving, he did see me, and he wasn't rude about the situation, but he told me that what I was doing was wrong, which I knew, and I did feel bad about it, but I was relieved because I got to use the bathroom. He told me not to come back, and I told him I wouldn't. I knew for certain that I was not going to go back to that Airbnb, especially after staying at his house one night without paying, and then the next time going into his house without his permission to use the bathroom. And I was like, yeah, I definitely can't come back here. And I was terrified that he would call the cops, press charges on me. But thankfully, glory be to God, he did not do that. And I never returned to that Airbnb after that, which was great. I ended up carrying my duffel bag and my backpack. Unfortunately, when I was walking, my duffel bag broke open. The zipper broke. One of the zippers was broken already, and then the second zipper broke. And I was struggling to carry it. It was really heavy. There was a park nearby that I knew of, and I decided to walk there. I wanted to go to this, there was a gym near the park that I was heading to. I decided to go there to ask them if they had a phone charger I could use, but they did not. So still yet, my phone was dead, and I couldn't use it, couldn't connect to any Wi-Fi, but I had to continue on and go to the park. It was really hard getting there because I had to walk up hills to get to the park, and my duffel bag was really heavy, and I was wearing a backpack as well. But the Lord helped me get through it. Along the way, there were people outside, and I was asking them for help, if I could use their phone charger, if they had one that I could use. There was one girl who was running who I'd seen the day before, so the first morning that I was in LA, October 21st, I did go to the park just to check it out beforehand, and so that's how I knew to go back to the park the second time. And the same girl that I had seen the first time I went to the park, I had seen running around the neighborhood the second time. So I went up to her and asked her if she had a charger I could use, but she told me that she didn't live around there. She lived in El Monte, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I left. There was nothing I could do about that. There were some construction workers outside. I tried asking one of the guys at his truck if he had an iPhone charger. He said no. And so I just had to move on till finally I just arrived at the park, and I decided I would ask one of the people who were at the park if I could use the charger. The first person I asked, she did not have a charger that I could use. And so I was like, well, I almost allowed myself to be defeated in that moment, but the Lord blessed me to continue on. And I went towards the playground area, and I saw a woman there, and she was playing with her grandson. And I left all my stuff on a table, one of the picnic tables outside, and then I walked over to her and I asked her, do you think I could use your phone to look up homeless services? And she said, oh wow. She was surprised when I asked her. I introduced myself to her first, and then I asked her if I could use her phone because I didn't have a phone charger and my phone was dead. And she asked me what for. I told her so I could look up homeless resources. And thanks to God, she was very kind to me, and she told me that she had a friend who worked for an organization that helped people who were experiencing homelessness. And so she told me she would let me use her phone charger. She told me that I could use her phone charger that was in her car. I just had to give her my phone, and I did that. And then she said she would call her friend for me so that she could help me out with the homeless resources that I needed. And so I did that. She called her friend, and then I went back to her car. My phone was charged a bit, and so I was able to use that. And then she gave me some food. I needed some food. I hadn't eaten since the morning of October 22nd. That's what it was. And so she gave me a bunch of snacks, and I just took everything that she offered me. And I was so thankful. I was so thankful. And she said that her friend would be there soon just to wait for her, and because she had to leave. So I left her car and I waited at the park table that I had my stuff at. And then I saw her. She was still at the park, and she was speaking to another woman. And the woman that she spoke to came to me, and she gave me $20. You know, she told me that she heard about when I had spoken to her friend, and she just really, wanted to bless me and encourage me, and she gave me $20, and I really appreciated that. I was astounded, and I knew the Lord was with me because of the kindness that I had been shown by the people that I spoke with. And it was really impactful for me to have experienced that, because I'm what one might consider an introvert. I often consider myself to be an introvert. I've struggled a lot in the past with speaking to people, especially strangers, and asking for help. And so I was thankful to the Lord that He gave me the courage and the strength to ask for help, and He blessed me to receive the help that I needed. And so this was about 9 in the morning. And so around about 9:30 in the morning, the police pulled up at the park, and I was terrified. I thought that they had heard from my Airbnb host about how I trespassed and stayed in his house without paying and using his restroom without his permission. But to my surprise, thanks to God, they were actually there because of the phone call that the woman I had spoken with earlier had made to her friend. And so they were there not to arrest me, but to help me. And so the police officers had asked me about my circumstances, and I told them that while I was there in LA and how I wasn't going back home and how I needed help, because I was experiencing homelessness at that point. And they helped me. They told me about a homeless access center for youth in El Monte, ding, 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 and that they would take me there to help me to get all the resources that I needed. And so I was very confident about going to the access center that they had recommended to me, because earlier I had spoken with a girl who had mentioned El Monte. And so I knew once again that the Lord was leading me, and that was where I was meant to go. And so I had an opportunity for the very first time in my life to ride in the backseat of a police car, and they drove me all the way from Monterey Park, which is where I was when I first came to LA, to El Monte, and I got to receive some assistance from a homeless access center called Pacific Clinic's Hope Drop-In Center. So while I was in El Monte at the Pacific Clinic Hope Drop-In Center, the staff who worked there blessed me to receive a motel voucher for 2 nights at first. They were trying to help me. They told me that I can only get up to 4 nights in the motel, and to start out with 2, and if I needed the other 2, then they would give that to me. And then they also gave me some bus passes so I could have transportation around the city. And they also fed me. I got to eat some food, and they told me that I could do my laundry there. So I was thankful to the Lord for that. And one of the staff members also took me to get a a government phone, an Obama phone. And so I have that now, so I'm able to communicate with people whenever I need to. In addition to my iPhone, which is what I'm filming on now. And I just keep this so that I can use it whenever I have Wi-Fi, because why get rid of my iPhone when I could just keep it until I have an opportunity to get phone service again. So yeah, so now I have two phones, one a government phone with service and the other an iPhone with no service, but I can use to connect to the internet. So yeah, so I was thankful for that time. I was able to stay in the motel, and I was, continuing to work with the staff at the Access Center. They were trying to help me to get resources, but they told me that the person that I could speak with who would help me to get housing, to be in a housing program, wouldn't be there until Tuesday. And so I had to figure out what I was going to do from Wednesday night, October 23rd, until Tuesday, October 29th. Yeah. But I only had enough motel vouchers to last me until Sunday, October 27th, though. So the 4 nights were being from that Wednesday to that Saturday night, and then in the morning, October 27th, I would have nowhere else to go. And that wasn't good, because I would have to figure out what to do that night. But I decided not to worry about that until the time came, thankfully. And so I spent my time in the motel. I made use of the resources that they had for me at the Access Center, to do laundry, eat food, use the bus passes that they gave me. And yeah, the 27th rolled around, and I had to check out of the motel, and I didn't have anywhere else to go again. So I decided that I would go to Pasadena that night. I had heard about another Access Center for homelessness, homeless youth in Pasadena. But I had to wait until Monday morning to ask for the help that I needed. So on Sunday, October 27th, 2024, I was able to go back to Pacific Hope Clinic's drop-in center, because they are open on weekends, thankfully. And I asked them for some help, but they told me there was nothing that they can do. And so while I was there, I looked up the Access Center in Pasadena and nearby locations, and I asked one of the staff members, about Pasadena, where's the safest place for someone who's experiencing homelessness to stay throughout the night so that they would be okay. And they told me the safest place was around the area near the station, I believe. And so I decided that I would just have to go to Pasadena and figure out what I was going to do there. And so while I was looking up places near the station that I had to go to, I found out about a medical clinic, and I was hoping that maybe they would let me stay there throughout the night until the morning if I told them my story. So that's where I went when I first went to Pasadena. And unfortunately, they let me use the bathroom. I really needed to use the restroom, so that's how I was able to get in the door. But then they saw me sitting in the lobby, and they were like, "Oh, no, you have to go. We don't allow people to stay here overnight." I was like, "Okay, cool." And so one of the nurses and one of the patient's relatives that was staying there, they directed me to a nearby parking garage, and they told me that that was a good place that I could stay throughout the night. And so that's where I was for a couple hours. I was there for a couple hours. But I had to use the restroom again, and I did not want to carry my duffel bag with me because it was really heavy. And so I only took my backpack with me, and thankfully there was a bar nearby that was open. There was this family having, a private event, and I asked the employee who was outside, clearing the tables, if I could use the restroom, and he said I could. And so I did that. And then I went back to the parking garage after. I was really thankful that I was able to use the restroom. And then I had plans to, stay in the garage until the morning. Unfortunately, another homeless person came, and he came and sat on the stairs where I was sitting, where I was planning on staying that night. And I was like, "Oh, this is not good," because I am a young woman all by myself, and he was a man, and I didn't know him. He was a stranger. So I knew this was not a good situation for me to remain in. And so, yeah, I set an alarm. He asked me questions, and I was trying to be vague as possible. I did not tell him the truth, what was going on. I told him that I was waiting for someone to pick me up, and I was. The train. I was waiting for the morning, but it was really the train that I was waiting for. And I set an alarm, pretending as though that I had always planned on leaving at a specific time. And so when the alarm went off, I just left. Yep, I left and I went back to the train. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And so I just decided to get on the train and stay on there throughout the night until its final destination. And so that's what I did. I slept on the train until it arrived in Long Beach, downtown Long Beach, and that's where I stayed for a couple hours. I asked the staff when I got there, the train staff, when the next train would arrive, and they said in the morning. But they told me that a bus would come around 2 in the morning, and so I could wait at the bus stop until then to go back to the Union Station, and there I could get on the train to go back to Pasadena. So that's what I did. I waited out at the bus stop from 1 in the morning to about 2:30 in the morning for the bus. Thankfully, there was a public restroom. I had to use the restroom again. I don't know why every time I needed to go somewhere I had to use the restroom, but I did. And so I saw some girls going to the restroom, and I was like, yes, there's a restroom, a public restroom. So I went to use the restroom, and then I returned to the bus stop and waited. I met a man named Jose, a homeless man. He was pretty nice. He asked me questions, and I got to tell him about, the Lord and just how I was having faith in him to help me out. And then I also met a woman named Sam, and she was very kind. She told me she would stay with me throughout the night until I got to the Union Station again. So she did, and we ended up going to the Union Station together, and then we parted ways from there. And so it was about 4:50 in the morning. It was about 4:30 in the morning when I arrived at the Union Station, and then I went to the platform where I would have to board the train to Pasadena, and I ended up boarding the train back to Pasadena about 5 in the morning. And so I went back to Pasadena, and I stayed at the train station from about, I think it was like 6 o'clock in the morning until about 7 or 8 o'clock, I think 7:30 in the morning. I decided to stay there because they had a reclining chair, and then I had to wait at the train station for as long as I did because the homeless access center that I was trying to get to didn't open until 9 in the morning, and I didn't want to be traveling around the city until sunrise came, and it was getting closer to the time when the access center had opened. So I just stayed at the station. Once again, I had to use the restroom, and there was a park across the street, but when I went to go to the public restrooms at the park, it was closed. So there was nothing I could do. And finally, I just decided I was going to have to leave. Thankfully, I was able to connect to the Wi-Fi out there while I was at the train station. At one of the restaurants that was nearby, I had connected to their guest Wi-Fi, and I looked up restaurants near the access center that I had to go to, and I found out somewhere that I thought I could go to use the restroom. I was thinking about going to Little Caesars to buy some food because I was hungry, and going to a restroom and seeing where I could use the restroom. I think there was a Walgreens near Little Caesars, but they didn't have a bathroom in there. They didn't have a restroom, and so I was out of luck in that department. But I had to continue on, and so the way that I ended up getting to Little Caesars and Walgreens is that I ended up taking the bus. So I took the bus from the train station to Little Caesars. Little Caesars was closed, so I couldn't get any food. I walked to Walgreens. Walgreens didn't have a restroom, so I had to walk back to the street where Little Caesars was on. And I just decided to walk down the street so I could get to the access center. I knew that I was just going to have to wait until they opened to use the restroom. But thankfully, there was a Mexican restaurant on that street, and the Lord impressed in my heart to go there and to ask if they had a restroom, and they did, and they let me use the restroom. And then I got to sit there. Like, I was nervous that they were going to have me, like, they were going to make me buy something in order to use the restroom or to sit there, but they didn't. They let me sit there, and I stayed there until about 8:30 in the morning. And so then I left. I walked down the street to get to the Access Center, and finally they opened at 9 in the morning, and I got to go in, talk with the staff there. They did my intake. I got to take a shower because I really needed to. I hadn't taken a shower since Sunday. No, I hadn't taken a shower since Saturday night because I usually take my showers at nighttime. And so I went like a whole day without taking a shower. But thankfully I got to take a shower that morning at the Access Center. I got to do my laundry again because I needed to do my laundry. And then one of the staff members, she gave me a list of locations for homeless shelters, and I had to call all the shelters and see if they had any available beds for me. Unfortunately, none of them did. And I also decided to call some Seventh-day Adventist churches to see if anyone could help me. And unfortunately, no one at the church was able to help me. But I decided that I would try and go to one of the churches back in El Monte, and see if they were open. And so, yeah. While I was still at the Homeless Access Center in Pasadena, which is called Hillsides, by the way, I was devastated because I did not have anywhere to go. None of the shelters had any openings for me. And I really did not want to go through what I went through the night before, traveling throughout the night and getting no sleep. And so I was struggling with that. And I had to pray to the Lord. I prayed over it. But ultimately, there was nothing I could do. The only thing I could do was continue walking. And I knew that I wasn't... At first, I had planned on staying at the Access Center until they closed. I think it was around 5 o'clock. But it was like 4 o'clock, and I just didn't want to stay there. Like, there was nothing that they could do to help me at that point. And I just decided to leave. I just had to go. I couldn't just sit around doing nothing, pitying myself. I just had to go. So I decided I was just going to do what I did the night before, traveling around, see what would happen in the morning. I would go back to the Access Center and try to get help. So I left there. While I was there, they also blessed me. They gave me a bus pass. Another one, it was a bus card so that I could have it was a more secure option because the bus passes I had received before from Hope, from Pacific Clinic's Hope Drop-In Center, they were actually just, they were like these little tickets that only provided four rides, and I used those up pretty quickly because I was traveling around to try and get help from the Access Centers. And so when I was at Hillsides, they gave me a bus card so that I could actually have something that was more consistent and would last longer. So yeah, they gave me a bus card, and then I also got to eat while I was there too. And I took some snacks with me so I could have some food while I was gone. And so I left Hillsides. I went back to El Monte. I was planning on going back to the Access Center in El Monte, but they were closed by the time that I got there, I think. They were just about to close when I got there. And so I went in. I think I used the bathroom again or something. Maybe got some food. I don't remember. But then I had to leave again. And so once they were closed, I went to the bus stop that was right outside. And this man came. He was a Mexican man. And I just decided to say hi to him. I asked him how his day was. I introduced myself, and he told me his name. His name was Felix. And he was a really nice guy. And so he and we got on the same bus. And we headed to the bus stop so that I could get to Pasadena. And while I was outside, he asked me about my situation, and I told him how I was experiencing homelessness. And he told me he was also going through a similar situation. And he invited me to come where he was, and he said he would ask his employer if I could, stay in the car and he could help me out. I didn't do that. I ended up not doing that. This was actually, I know what happened. I met the guy Felix the night before I went to Pasadena for the first time. And he said that I could come back on Monday to meet him at the bus stop again, and he could see, what he could do to help me. But I ended up staying in Pasadena for so long that the time that we had planned to meet up again had already passed. And so there was nothing I could do about that. When I came back to El Monte on the 28th, after leaving Hillsides, I decided I would go to the church that I had looked up and see if anyone was there who could help me. But when I got to the church, it was closed. And so there was nothing I could do about that. I was going to go back to Pacific Clinic's Hope Drop-In Center, but they were closed by that time that I got there. And so I just decided, I'm just going to have to go back to Pasadena and do the same thing I had done the night before. Stay on the train till I got to Long Beach, etc., etc. But I decided instead of going all the way to Long Beach, I would just, go directly to the Union Station. So I went to Pasadena, and from there I went to the Union Station, and I decided I would try and just stay there until the morning. But I found out that if they saw people sleeping there throughout the night or whatever, the security guards would make them leave. And so I was like, oh crap, I have to make sure that I don't fall asleep, because I had nowhere else to go. The only place I could go to and stay at was the Union Station. It's the only place I felt safe in staying at. And so I just decided to sit by the escalator and wait there until the morning. I had to make sure that I stayed awake so that the security guards wouldn't make me leave. And if the security guards came and asked me what was going on, I told them I have to wait until the morning for my train. So I didn't have to worry about any of that, thankfully. While I was sitting at the escalators, I prayed to the Lord and I told him I couldn't go through the night the way that I had done before. I needed help, and I asked him if he could send someone who would, ask me what was going on and offer me to stay at their place. The situation didn't turn out that way, though. I learned that I was going to have to be the one to ask for help. And so I had a couple of requirements, requests about the kind of person that I wanted to help me. My preference was for an old black lady who knew God, who would, see me and ask me if I was okay and offer me to stay with them until I was able to get back on my feet. Instead, as people kept walking by me and seeing me, my requests kept changing. So I said, okay, it doesn't have to be an old black lady, it could be a young black lady. And then it went from being a young black lady to any person who's willing to help me out, as long as they are led by the Spirit of the Lord, know God, and the Holy Spirit is in their household. Whoever the person is who would help me, a woman, I would stay with that person should the Lord bless me to stay with them. Alright, so that was all for today. I will see you guys in my next video. Until then, fly high and keep on swimming. Peace.